Rain pooled in every crevice of Seattle's streets, each droplet catching the streetlights' glow like liquid silver. The city, usually alive with distant engines and neon hum, lay hushed under the unending patter of rain. Inside a patrol car, Officer James Miller peered through misted windows, searching dim alleyways and closed-door fronts. Next to him, Rex, his German Shepherd partner, sat rigid, ears slicing the air. Nights like this were their rhythm, routine watches in a city that never truly slept. But tonight, as the wipers slapped the windshield in steady time, something felt off. A question buzzed under James's skin. Was it just the rain, or was something else out there? A soft, strangled cry snuck through the rain's rhythm, small and fragile, yet impossible to ignore. Instinct turned James's head. Rex's posture sharpened. The dog's low bark against the car door pulsed urgency. James's heart thumped as he eased the patrol car to a stop, lunging out into the chill. Rex shot ahead, nose to the ground, tail a rigid rudder. Under the rain's relentless beat, they crossed into a narrow alley that smelled of damp cardboard and rusting bins. Each step drew them closer to that desperate wail, each heartbeat a drum of alarm. What awaited at the alley's end? Dim light and towering trash bins framed a small soaked figure curled beneath a ragged blanket. Rain struck the fabric in cold lashes as James knelt, heart lodged in his throat. Rex stood, a silent sentinel, eyes locked on the tiny bundle. When James peeled back the blanket, he found a baby no older than a few months, skin ghostly under the lamplight, lips tinged blue. The babe's fingers flexed weakly, breaths whisper thin against the storm's roar. In that instant, the alley transformed from mere asphalt to a fragile cradle of life, alive with danger, yet pregnant with questions. What did this child carry with him into the night? Holding the infant close, James's gaze snagged on a pale star etched on the baby's wrist, perfect and deliberate. Before he could think, his fingers brushed something metallic beneath the blanket, a tiny pendant on a thin chain etched in swirling symbols older than any language he knew. Ancient, otherworldly, the trinket seemed to hum with hidden weight. James rose, baby pressed to his chest like precious cargo, whispering, "Hang in there." Beside him, Rex paced, a rhythm of anxious resolve. Together they curved back onto the slick street, forging toward the hospital under a curtain of rain. Each drop spurred them forward. Time was slipping away. The emergency room doors whooshed open, flooding them with harsh fluorescent light. Doctors and nurses froze mid-stride to see a soaked officer clutching a frail child, followed by a dripping German Shepherd whose gaze never wavered. "We need help," James called, voice taut. A nurse swept forward, her brow furrowing at the baby's ice-cold skin. They transferred him to a stretcher in a flurry, blankets, monitors, 4 lines in a blur. James hovered, pulse thrumming in his ears. He'd faced crises before, but never like this. A child delivered by fate, a dog whose vigilance felt supernatural. As Rex lay by the stretcher, eyes locked on the infant, James wondered what mysteries lay hidden in those symbols and that star. While wires and tubes revived colour to the baby's cheeks, James tapped out a message to dispatch. A check missing child reports. 1 month old, star birthmark, minutes inched by, then returned, no matches. It was as if the child hadn't existed until this night. His mind spun around the birthmark's precision and the pendant's cryptic script, purposeful signs of something deeper. He snapped a photo of the pendant, sent it to Mark, his historian friend. If anyone could untangle the symbols, it was him. As James stepped back, Rex didn't budge, head resting gently on the stretcher's edge, as if offering silent encouragement. What lineage hid in that star, and who would come searching next? Hours passed. The infant's chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. His colour bloomed under the nurse's care. James remained glued to the glass of the paediatric ward, watching every breath. Rex sat sentinel just outside, ears twitching at every footstep. Then James's phone buzzed. Mark wrote, "Are these symbols linked to an ancient lineage, families with rare gifts, long protected by nature, hunted by those who would exploit them? I'll dig deeper, but this is no ordinary abandonment." The words echoed the uneasy hum in James's gut. This was bigger than a lost child. Even Rex seemed to stiffen at the message, as if he too sensed a storm gathering just beyond the hospital walls. In the nights that followed, James returned to the ward under the guise of checking on the baby's vitals, but always alert to the shadows. Each time, a hooded figure lingered in the waiting area, tall, silent, face hidden in darkness. He never approached, never spoke, just watched. And every time, Rex's hackles rose, a low growl rolling up his throat. Who was this silent watcher? What did he want with the child? James's training screamed caution. Threats often wore the shape of concern, yet every glance toward that stranger only deepened the knot in his chest. Someone was coming for this baby, and James intended to be ready. One rain-washed night, James stepped outside for air. When he returned, Rex's posture was electric. The ward's hallway was empty but for a shifting shadow. Before James could react, the hooded man slipped toward the pediatric door. Rex lunged, teeth bared, barking a challenge that shattered the silence. The stranger froze, hand on the handle. James sprinted forward, gun drawn, voice steady but fierce. Stay back! The man hesitated, eyes flicking to the crib's pale glow and back to Rex's unwavering stance. With practiced ease, James closed the gap, pinning the intruder's arm behind his back as security swarmed in. Who trained this figure? And what would they risk to seize the child? In the interrogation room's harsh light, the man unmasked secrets darker than James imagined. He belonged to a faction convinced that certain bloodlines held power they would claim to control nature itself. He had tracked whispers of the baby's heritage, convinced that possessing him would grant influence beyond measure. James's jaw tightened. Protecting citizens was one thing, but shielding a child with a destiny tied to ancient forces was something else entirely. With the intruder cuffed, James felt both relief and dread. This fight was far from over, but he had a new lead. Mark's next message came like a beacon. Look up Margaret Whitmore on the outskirts of Granite Falls. Her family tree matches the Pendant's lineage. Within the hour, James and Rex were on winding roads, rain-slicked branches casting lace shadows across the windshield. At a secluded cottage framed by towering pines, an older woman answered the door, her eyes warm but wary. When James mentioned the pendant, her face drained of colour. "It belonged to my daughter," she whispered, voice trembling. Inside she spoke of a family born with rare gifts, hunted for generations. Her daughter and son-in-law had fled to shield their child, leaving him in hopes a good soul would find him first. Finally, the mystery unfolded. This baby was blood of a lineage both blessed and cursed. What danger still lurked beyond these walls? Back at the hospital, Margaret approached the crib with hands that shook like autumn leaves. The baby's cheeks glowed with renewed health, his tiny fist flexed around the edge of his blanket. She leaned in, tears slipping down her face, and murmured, "Me sweet boy, I'm so sorry." Rex settled at her feet, eyes gentle yet watchful. James stood back, heart full at the reunion's quiet grace. Here in sterile corridors, warmth bloomed where fear had reigned. Margaret's whispered thanks met James's weary smile. You can thank Rex, he never left his post. At the sound of his name, the dog's tail gave a slow wag, mission finally at rest. Yet outside, the pines still rustled with secrets. Had they truly escaped the shadows? Dawn found James by a frost-beaded window, the grey Seattle sky mirroring his heavy thoughts. The threat of kidnapping still flickered at the edges of his mind, but for now the storm held its peace. Rex lay curled at his feet, ears perked even in sleep. James's phone buzzed. Another note from Mark, confirming Margaret's family tree stretched back to legends older than the city itself. For all the questions that remained, one truth shone bright. Some missions aren't about convictions or arrests. They're about guiding the most vulnerable home. And with Rex at his side, James knew they would face whatever came next. Together. What lay ahead for this child of ancient promise? Would the shadows return with darker intent? One thing was certain. In a city often drowned by rain and noise, a boy and a dog had reminded James Miller what it truly meant to protect. And that was a story far bigger than any one night.